evening, ladies and gentlemen. Am I audible? Am I audible? Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here this evening with all of you. In a country which has the most enlightened leadership, arguably the most technologically advanced country in the world, it's indeed an honor to be amongst leaders. And I know talking about artificial intelligence to this group is like preaching to the converted. But let me at the outset express my gratitude to the FinEXPO team, Gilson, Elizabeth, Harris, and my colleague Julie. Like I said, it's a great privilege to be here. Artificial intelligence, of course, is not only the talk of the town, but has seeped into the consciousness of human beings across geographies. Time and space are captive to artificial intelligence today. But in the rush to commoditize it and to identify new use cases and deploy tools at lightning speed, I think some substantive conversations about artificial intelligence are not taking place. And so I hope to take you on a very short journey about some of the factors that are driving this huge revolution in human progress, and then hopefully to help us step back, take a deep breath and see what this technology is all about. I'm all for artificial intelligence, but I think at the core of this new revolution should be a new type of AI, which I call authentic intelligence. And with that, let me share some thoughts about some of the substantive factors that are driving this entire movement, as Harris mentioned. Evolutionary biologists will tell you that of all the species that we now know on Earth, they are only 10% of the total species on Earth, which means 90% of the species on Earth are still unknown, mostly under the sea, deep within places like the Mariana Trench, lurk organisms which we are not even dreamt about. So 90% of species are unexplored. So too is the case with AI. If you notice on that slide, I've written a line called 27DOF. That is a very significant milestone in evolution of AI. 27 degrees of freedom is what the human hand possesses. Artificial intelligence designers and developers have been struggling with this. But during the last shareholders meeting of Tesla, Elon Musk said that Tesla's humanoid robot has achieved 25 degrees of freedom. And designing the hand has taken a huge amount of effort because it was the most challenging design problem of all. So they have been able to achieve 25 out of 27. Now, when they achieve, and they will achieve it in a matter of time, when they achieve 27 degrees of freedom, that will be a paradigm shift in the manner in which humanoids will start taking off in all directions. In fact, Elon Musk says that over 1 million humanoid Optimus 2 robots are going to take over every possible kind of work, all relating to 27 degrees of freedom. What that will do to human existence is unknown, because we are in unknown territory. You know, there are some factors which are fueling this whole explosion of technology, and they operate under the hood, subtly. The first is Moore's law. Technologists in this room will know what Moore's law is all about. You know, way back, 30 or 35 years ago, Moore postulated this law that the amount of computing that you can compress on a silicon chip doubles every 18 months. Based on that, my own conviction has been that if Moore's law is in operation, if the amount of computing can be compressed, increase double every 18 months, then the stock of human knowledge doubles every 2 or 3 years. But today, the numbers are very different. You know, the rate of change has gone through the roof. According to some thinkers like Richard Susskind, for example, one of the pioneers of AI, he says that the rate of change is 2 raised to 20 every 6 months. If you look at that metric, within 10 years, the amount of compute, the power of compute would have increased 1.48 million times from today. So what that does, who can forecast? When you see compute increasing almost 2 million times in 10 years, who can forecast what the future is going to be? But along with that, you have to understand that the World Wide Web, married with the Moore's law, has resulted in massive and almost complete digitization of human knowledge. And it is that stock of digitized human knowledge on which AI has evolved. Because all this knowledge has gone to train the large language models. So today's AI explosion is fueled by Moore's law and the digitization of knowledge caused by the arrival of the internet and the World Wide Web. The other factor that is really driving AI today is this huge amount of money, a flood of money pouring into the field, something like $3 trillion, of which almost $1 trillion is in creating what is known as GCCs, Global Capability Centers. Huge amounts of money are going into not only research, but also laying the groundwork for future compute. And there is one key methodology that is further accelerating the change. It's called RSI, Recursive Self-Improvement, which is machines, AI improves the process of improvement. So it's not just machines improving machines, but machines improving the process of improvement. You know, those of us who have been steeped in management and leadership know about Kaizen. Kaizen is about incremental change. Recursive self-improvement is Kaizen on steroids. The kind of change that creates is unbelievable. And this has actually been very presciently forecast by somebody called John Irving Good, who wrote an essay in 1960 in which he said, the ultra-intelligence machine, the first ultra-intelligent machine, will actually be the last machine that human beings need to invent. Because this ultra-intelligent machine will create better and better machines, so human intervention won't be required. And that is exactly what artificial general intelligence is going to do. So, under these circumstances, what does leadership mean today in this supercharged environment? we'll have to come back to the quintessential leadership role. Leaders will have to define the purpose and the incentives and values. They'll have to ask the question why. Because if the question why is not answered, there is a very high probability that the entire technology and systems and optimizations will get misaligned. And when you have misalignment, you will have, as my friend James will appreciate, you will have breakdown in governance, breakdown in compliance. You will incentivize wrong kinds of behavior, and all the progress we have achieved towards climate change will go down the tube. So leaders will have to take this whole question front and center and answer. Why are we doing what we are doing? What purpose does it serve? And what are the values that we will stand by, live by, and if necessary, die by? That becomes a critically important role for leaders. And then, secondly, we have to visualize AI beyond metrics and beyond tools and tactics. These are not just tools and tactics. They are the architecture of an entire civilization, an infrastructure at civilization scale, not tactical but strategic. While it's very exciting to see the outputs coming out of various kinds of AI tools, they are not just a combination of tools. We've got to stand by and see what it's doing to the entire system. So AI is actually a civilization scale infrastructure architecture. Thirdly, leaders will have to build guardrails, which means define clear AI charters and help their organizations and themselves create a code of conduct and create very enforceable protocols. Here, of course, AI is in a very good place because that it does naturally. Automate using what management experts call catalytic mechanisms, bring in feedback loops to make sure that the guardrails are automatically defined. But leaders will have to take the initiative to specify those guardrails. What are the do's and what are the don'ts, and where do we not stray? The next point is something leaders are finding very uncomfortable. We will simply have to confront massive job losses. As leaders, as societies, as countries, when this technology really becomes mainstream, moves from niche to mainstream, we will have to answer this question. What do people do for their livelihood when they have lost their traditional way of work? That's going to be a very big question. And here, I must talk about digital immigrants, which actually will wipe out jobs of countries, of people. Because you will have people, you will have AI agents who will deliver much superior performance without overtime, without benefits, who will optimize everything at an unbelievable scale and quality, who don't need visas, who don't need overtime, who don't need maternity benefits, and as a result of which entire classes and societies will lose jobs. And then what happens to the remittance economy? Because a large part of the global economy depends on people going across sovereign borders in search of economic security, and then they send back remittances back. There are many countries which are highly dependent on the remittance economy. What happens when digital immigrants eliminate that possibility? What will it do to national finances? What will happen to trade deficits? What will happen to fiscal deficits? What will happen to the level of inflation? These are all questions to which answers can be found with collaborative, thoughtful discussions and negotiations. And finally, I think the leaders in the AI age will have to become the new God. G-O-D, guardians of destiny. That is what leaders will have to metamorphose into. So having said that, let me very briefly sketch my take on some of the trends and future that holds for us, that AI holds for us. First of all, the structure of our companies will undergo a change like we have never seen before. Traditional companies have been pyramids, and with the internet and remote working, the pyramid has flattened a lot. AI is definitely going to flatten it even more. And even companies as a body politic, as defined in law, the whole definition of a company can change. Because today you will have infinite number of individuals operating collaboratively as a body politic. So the whole structure of organizations will change. In finance and banking, I know Elizabeth and team are deeply concerned with finance and banking. There's one trend that I have been thinking about in banking and finance. You know, those bankers and finance experts on the floor are very familiar with this concept of NPAs, non-performing assets, right? This is really a bugbear for banks. I foresee that the concept of NPAs will become obsolete with large-scale AI application. Why? Because AI agents will pull in data from multiple databases and run multiple algorithms and probability simulations to find out whether a particular loan is going to be unpaid. And so the whole process will get super optimized. And therefore, I think the whole concept of NPAs will become obsolete. But in its place, there could be certain other uncertainties brought into the system. For example, central banks are far behind the technology most of the time. So how will central banks bring in banking regulation in the commercial banking sector to cope with elimination of NPAs? In healthcare, my good friend Dr. Laura will understand that people don't want doctors, they want health. So therein lies a challenge. People don't want doctors, they want health, which then means a new class of healthcare professional will arise, and the whole scenario will get dominated by non-invasive, preventive, highly precision-oriented therapies, treatments, and surgeries. So the whole medical profession is going to be super challenged to find new relevance. There is a large body of literature which says that the legal system is going to be obsolete. The courts themselves can get obliterated because AI will be able to bring in such technologies that will obliterate the need for pendency of litigation and so on. In military and defense, it's going to be the era of autonomous combat. And in fact, sovereign boundaries themselves are likely to be in question. So there is excitement, but there's also clear and present danger. AI can violate values and what it is to be human. For example, there was one case in a simulation where the AI sensed that one of the executives who was going to shut it down was having an extramarital affair. So the AI on its own blackmailed him. And in another extreme case, an AI system which perceived a threat to its own existence actually tried to kill the executive who it perceived to be its enemy. So, all these kinds of things are happening, but I will come back to some things that give us hope and briefly share with you the story of Stanislav Petrov. who on the 26th of September saved the human race. He was an officer in a Soviet missile battery who sensed a nuclear missile coming in from the US, and instead of retaliating, he said, this is not right. There's something wrong in the system, and he exercised his human judgment to prevent a counter-strike by Soviet forces, and in that way saved humanity. In fact, you and I are sitting here because of Stanislav Petrov. So, let me conclude by saying that the best way to predict the future is to create it by coming back to our basics of humanity and leadership. Thank you.